Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of Craic and the Bat. I am delighted to be joined by my good friend Andy Cooney. Andy, welcome to what we call Craic and the Bat, brought to you by the Irish American Baseball Society, which is a society for Irish people who love baseball and baseball people who love Ireland.
It's great to be
here. We are delighted to have you join us.
Nothing like the sound of the crack of the bat. Let me tell you.
That crack in the bat, because we're going to have some crack, and we're going to talk about bats. So I mean, you've been referred to as an American gift to Ireland's heritage. I like this one, Irish America's favorite son. Because I mean, I was called the complete opposite when I banned Danny Boy, but we get into that a little further along. So funny story how Andy and I met. I'm not even sure if you knew this. We had a great mutual friend, a guy by the name of Kevin Brosnan. And Kevin had this tremendous setup at Shea, where he had a table in the Diamond Club, and we were treated like royalty. Kevin, I guess, did some work for Aramark, and one of the perks was he had a table, and you never know who you were going to meet at that table. I mean, whether Red Foley was a regular, but Jack Lang, Bill Madden, Gene Michael, you never knew who you were going to meet. So Kevin will call you up, and it was kind of a half summons, half invitation. You come into the game tonight, and it was, it was great food and it was great company, but the only problem was you had to dress up. Mm-hmm. Couldn't go in shorts and a t-shirt. I showed up in shorts and a t-shirt once, never showed up in shorts and a t-shirt again. And he says to me, I want you to come. He says, there's somebody I really want you to meet. He says, you have to meet Andy Cooney. Now, he said Andy Cooney. I heard Andy Cooney, but all I'm thinking is Andy Rooney. Now, and I said to Kevin, backstory to that is about 2 weeks before, I'd been at the launch of the Touch Shore documentary during the Tribeca Film Festival. And we were lucky enough, because my father was involved in the movie, to be at the post party, and everybody and anybody. Frank Gifford was there, Yogi Berra was. I sat next to Yogi Berra for the movie. Walter Cronkite was there, and Andy Rooney was there. Now I got all of these guys to sign. Andy Rooney was a miserable SOB, and he wouldn't sign the ball. So I said to Kevin, I don't know, but I said, I didn't have the greatest experience meeting Andy Rooney. And he said, no, he's a wonderful guy. He's a wonderful guy. And I was like, Jesus. So I show up, and thankfully it wasn't that little miserable bastard, but it was in fact our good friend, and we've become best of friends ever since. So I was delighted that I got my C's and my R's mixed up. So Andy, where are your people from?
My people are from Monaghan and from Dublin.
We won't hold that
from Latin County, Monaghan, just outside of Castleblaney, and the Liberties in Dublin, Pimlico Street.
We're right. They probably grew up listening or smelling the. I lived not far from there for a brief time, and all you
not far from the brewery
was I never tasted Guinness, but I smelt the malting process, and it was quite. I enjoyed it quite an amount. Now, is your wife from Cavan?
My wife is. Her parents are from Cavan. Her parents are from Coot Hill and from Munjaborn, just outside of Cavan Town.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Munjaborn, yes. Coot Hill, good part of the country. So now you're one of 9.
Yep.
Irish family. Where do you fall?
Yes, I am the 4th oldest, and actually, after the 9th child, my grandfather Andy Feehan from Dublin actually put my mother on a pedestal to keep my father away from her. So yes, but I'm the 4th. I'm batting cleanup in our family. So there you go.
So you're stuck in the middle. So you're kind of like the flyover kid.
Kind of. Well, one good thing about what I had going for me, I was born around Christmas time, so it was always a special time to have a birthday.
Very nice. Very nice. Now you mentioned Andy Feehan. He was your granddad. He was a big influence on you. He was one of the I won't. He may have been the gardener who nurtured your love of music.
Yeah, actually he was, and he came to America back in the 1920s and ended up working for Con Edison. But he had a wonderful Irish tenor voice, and he was the one to always stand up at a party and belt out a couple of tunes, and he was the real deal. I mean, he wasn't just a guy to get up and sing. He really had the instrument, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And he had a great personality and lilt when he sang and lit up a room. And it was a great influence on me. And my grandfather used to sing all the classics of course, John McCormick, Joseph Locke, you know, the tenors. That was the fashionable thing, you know, when he was, in fact, he actually was backstage at Carnegie Hall to watch his hero, John McCormick, in 1935.
Count John McCormick.
Yeah, exactly. Count John McCormick. So that was his thing. And we had him for 86 years. So we're very, very blessed. And I had him for most of my, you know, growing up life. And my mom, of course, it was drilled into the house, her growing up. But my mom was quite the opposite. She loved the country and Irish stuff. She was a big fan of Larry Cunningham and Brendan Shine and all of that stuff. Yeah. So between hearing all the John McCormick stuff and the Joseph Locke stuff, I was hearing the music from the Monaghan, Texas border.
Well, you forgot
Big Tom and
yeah, I was going to say you forgot the big guy, Big Tom. I mean,
Big Tom, of course, from Blaney. Yeah, that's why I said the Monaghan, Texas border.
You know, I mean, you're taking me back. I mean, I grew up in all of that. I'm a huge country fan, but growing up, I mean, I grew up listening to Johnny McAvoy and Susan McCann and Philomena Begley. And
that was my mother loved that stuff. And you know what? Here in the States on Long Island, where I live, there was a DJ on what was it? I think it was a radio station from Hofstra University, and his name is Tony Jackson, and another DJ, Tony Fallon. And it was a steady diet of country and Irish music. So that my mom was a big fan of that show, and she used to write out all the words of the songs. I'm at home in any Tipperary town, Slaney Valley, Gentle Mother, and I would learn these songs. And I probably, by the time I was probably 15 years old, I knew 100 songs.
Lovely, Leitrim. So just before we leave your grandfather, so when you think of your grandfather, is there one song that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple. One that he used to love to sing is a song called "If I Can Help Somebody," and it's kind of a tenor favorite. The Irish tenors do it. Anthony Kearns does it, but it was one that he used to love to sing, and also a family song called "Happy Are We All Together." And he actually learned this song from my grandmother's father. So this is like a really old song. All right. Yeah, I'll give you a verse of it. I'll give you the chorus. All right. And he goes, happy are we all together. Happy are we one and all. And may we lead a life of pleasure. And may we rise and never fall. 3 beautiful verses. And he would really get a room going with that. And I've carried on that song in my shows, whether it be Carnegie Hall or at a cruise, and we'll get the whole place going.
That's what I asked you. So basically, he's with you every performance.
He is absolutely, Sean. And in fact, the first time I had the opportunity of gracing that great stage of Carnegie Hall, when I walked out on that stage, I was just thinking about all the greats that were there, and of course thinking of the memory of John McCormick and my grandfather telling me about that special moment backstage at Carnegie Hall. So you know, he is with me every performance.
I was just curious because when I saw that, I was like, because you know it is when you know, especially when you have people close to you that were musical, there's always a song that comes to mind. So any of the rest of the 9 musical?
Well, you know what? We all took piano lessons growing up. My parents, they did that, which is a very, very cool thing. Made sure we had the opportunity to have music in our life. So we all took piano lessons. I guess for me, I was the only one that it kind of, if you will, the seed kind of took, if you will. But my sister Susan sings a song or two. She's one to get up and sing at a party. And Other than that, I'm pretty much the only one that I guess had the natural ability or the gift, the God-given gift to
Because
be able
I
to
was
do it.
just curious, so if like, an outsider like myself gets invited to a Cooney family cookout, and of course, after a couple of cans, they park themselves. I'm like,
The family show.
I was going to say, yeah, is there, like, I mean, is this going to be a bit like
It's
watching
very,
the
it's so
Osmonds?
it's so
You know,
common, especially in Irish music. There's a family uh, up in Pearl River, New York. All these talented musicians, they call themselves Gersha. They're all from one family,
yes,
playing traditional
I
Irish
actually
music.
met them. I believe they may at one point have performed at one of the induction ceremonies for the Irish Hall.
They probably did, but so there's you have Shillelagh Law, you have the McCarthy brothers,
Well, actually,
and
the funny thing is now, the third person here, my silent partner, Mr. Fitzgerald, he actually just posted. Shillelagh Law just played the anthem at City Field.
that's right. I heard that. I heard now. Was it? I heard just a musical version. I heard it was it Denny on the fiddle. That's
There
what I
was there
heard.
was a guy on a fiddle and a guy sitting on a box, which I thought was ironic because you're not supposed to sit during the national anthem. Only an Irish guy's going to sit.
Well, we'll give him a pass because that's the only way he can play that bloody instrument.
But the thing was, he didn't look to me. I mean, the thing is, I know how you play the box, but
And I don't know
look
how
to
you
be
would back
playing
the
the box.
national anthem playing it because there's really not a rhythm to the national anthem.
Yeah.
It was written back, back
But
in
it was
the
written as a march, right?
Huh?
It was written as a march.
It's actually, believe it or not, the national anthem is written in 3/4 time waltz tempo.
Right.
And if you listen, oh, say, can you see
Yeah.
by the dawn's early light? All right. So it's in 3/4 time. And a lot of people confuse that, but it is written in 3/4 time. A couple of measures have half measures in them.
Yeah.
But, back when they wrote songs like that, especially during George Washington's time and whatever, if you notice, there's not really a rhyme scheme in the national anthem. And
Right.
people just wrote lines and melodies. It didn't matter about rhyming. Rhyming
Right.
really didn't come in until Thomas More in
Right.
the mid to early 1800s, and Stephen Collins Foster. They started the professional, the way songwriters write now
Right.
in rhyme scheme. But back then, and that's why the national anthem can be tricky. And when I'm asked to sing it, I'm always crossing my fingers that I don't brain fart during the national anthem because there is no rhyme scheme. You're singing sentences,
Yeah.
and that's it. And of course, great sentences, if you will.
So while we're on the subject of anthems, when you sing the Irish national anthem, you sing it in Irish or English?
That's a great question. And my grandfather, he sang the original national anthem, which is the soldier song. It actually was not sung in Gaelic until the Gaelic referendum, I believe in the late 50s, where Gaelic was put back in the schools, and then people started singing Sheena Fianna Fáil. But the original, and believe it or not, the original national anthem is the soldier song. That is the original.
So,
So a lot of people don't know that, but you look it up
I didn't know that.
and you'll see.
But
Right. In fact, Phil Coulter, I asked Phil Coulter that question.
we're going to get to Phil Coulter in a minute. Now you're going ahead of yourself there.
Traveling, and I said, Phil, what's the original version? Oh, Sheena Fianna Fáil, of course. I said, no. I Googled it on the internet, and the soldier song is the original. And actually, if you go through every line of the soldier song, Google it, all 3 or 4 verses, it is an amazing lyric. When you read every line, and I mean every line of all 4 verses, it would make you so proud to be Irish. So I think singing in the Gaelic language is definitely a great thing because it was taken from the Irish, with British rule. And then, of course, it was instilled back in the schools, but no reason to put the soldier song in second place. Absolutely not.
So while we're talking about that and talking about music, the Dubliners.
Yeah.
One of the Dubliners' first hits was a song called Seven Drunken Nights.
Oh.
Sorry, Seven Drunken Nights. Which obviously, because the last 2 verses are slightly pornographic, was banned by RTE and BBC. So what did they do? They recorded it in Irish, and it went on to be a huge hit. I no one knew what they were saying, but they went on to be a huge hit.
Well, it's just like the Pogues when they were originally heard called Pogue Mahone.
Oh, they were originally called Pogue
until the
Mahone.
BBC found out what Pogue Mahone meant.
Yeah,
Yeah, folks.
yeah. And you know, it's ironic too. I mean, the Pogues. I mean, the tremendous. I mean, they're not a very visual band, but they're definitely a very, you know. I mean, I grew up listening to the Pogues. I mean, McGowan's got a phenomenal voice.
Well, believe it or not, you're gonna like this, Sean. I got bumped off the Late Late for Shane McGowan. Do you remember? I was back. It's got to be 20, 25 years ago. Sinead O'Connor and I think Sean. There was some drug thing. Something happened, and she came over to his aid or whatever. It made a lot of news. So when things make news, of course, the Late Late jumped on getting Shane McGowan on to ask him these questions, and his parents were in the audience, and I got bumped. There you go.
Well, actually, I won't say everybody in Ireland has a Late Late story, but my parents had won the national bar food competition in Ireland in 1976. So, I mean, this is a tremendous honor for a tiny little bar in the middle of nowhere. And so they were invited onto the Late Late, and so they're sitting in the front row.
And you know, we should mention this to your listeners or viewers out there, is that the Late Late Show is kind of like watching Jimmy Fallon.
Well, Johnny Carson is the best way to put it, because it was
Johnny Carson. You know, it's the late night variety show. Ryan Tuberty is the host of it. It's watched by all of Ireland.
Right. That's the thing. People go. It used to be on a Saturday night. Now it's on a Friday night. But people would go home from the pub to watch the Late Late.
Well, I did another show on the Friday night before it was changed, called Kenny Live.
Oh, Pat Kenny.
Yeah, with Pat Kenny. I did that, and I sang a song called "You Touched Upon My Life" with Noel Keelahan leading the band, and it was a great moment for me back. I have to say, about 1990. Don't even start.
So we're back in 76, and my parents and my father noticed that the two seats next to him are empty. So Gable comes out, and normally what they did was they'd start with a musical guest. He'd do his opening monologue, and then they start. Well, the opening music that night was the first time ever on Irish TV for the Boomtown Rats, Geldof. And you know, they were roaring and screaming. This is long before they had "I Don't Like Your Mondays" or "Rat Trap." Or it might have been "Rat Trap." And they finished off by Geldof jumping off the stage and landing in the seat next to my father. So that was my Boomtown Rat story. And
so he had
the biggest thing was they broke 700 pounds worth of equipment belonging to RTE and weren't allowed back. And in fact, I don't think they were ever brought back until Geldof got involved with Live Aid. So we're digressing as we normally do.
We are.
Before we get into what you're doing now and your illustrious career.
Let's go back to baseball.
Well, we're going to get back to baseball in a minute, but I'm more fascinated about, so you've been performing music since you were 17?
Yeah, I started pretty much when I was around 17. I used to go around to nursing homes with the keyboard, and I used to sing for the old people. And, you know, my parents would drop me off. I had a big old Fender Rhodes keyboard. Any musician out there would know exactly what I'm talking about. The thing weighed about 400 pounds, and it was quite an ordeal at that time to be lugging that around. But I used to go into nursing homes and play for the old people, and I did that a lot until I finally got a job on 2nd Avenue and 52nd Street at a place called Kennedy's.
Oh,
and
Jerry Toner.
Jerry Toner, that's right. That would have been about 1984. And so my mom and her girlfriend, Marie Lonergan, who was from Belfast, they used to go into the city every Wednesday night. My dad would let my mom out, of course, 9 kids, and they would blow off steam in New York, and they'd hit the Barleycorn, Lunny's. They would hit, of course, Kennedy's, Desmond's, all the Irish places at the time. And you remember them, Sean.
Right.
It was a classic time in New York for the Irish pub scene. And Marie Lonergan was cousins to Jerry Toner from Belfast. And she was like, come on, Jerry, come on, give Lee Barber's son a chance to play in here. Come on, Jerry. And she was adamant, bothering him. So finally, he gave me a shot. Little tiny upright piano. I came in and I really at the time, yeah, I didn't have a large repertoire, you know, even playing for the old people. It wasn't really, I was only starting out. So I would play all the songs I knew. And then after that, I would start just making up stuff on the piano. It might have sounded like a song, and I would just doodle along and start all over again. So I learned my craft playing in Kennedy's. In fact, about 3 months into the gig, Jerry Toner brings me to the back room with a blindfold on. And he takes off the blindfold, and what's there? A beautiful baby grand black piano. And he says, Andy, look what I bought you. Look at what I bought you. Get behind it and start playing. So that's how I started. And it wasn't too long after that when I went on with another group called the Celtic Connection. And I was doing both those gigs at one time. And I got into kind of the pub scene in the Bronx and in Queens until Patty Noonan heard about this young guy out there, you know, working around the scene. And of course, from there, I went on with the Patty Noonan Band for almost 8 years.
So before we leave Toners, I should tell you a funny story. So Jerry started with a guy called Terry O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually, the first place they had together was a
the
couple of doors up. It was called the Green Derby.
Oh, the Green Derby, that's right.
And now both Terry and Jerry worked with my father in the Rainbow Rooms, and they were saving to open up their own place. So they opened up. I mean, and it was on a shoestring budget. Like the front door, you had to lift it to open it. You know, when they opened first, they didn't have a kitchen, so you came in. They gave you a menu, and you ordered what your meal, and then the busboy went around the corner to the diner, picked up the meal, brought it back, put it on a plate, and gave it to you. And this is how they operated. And that's how it started. But the funniest story was they had their opening night. And obviously, being the fact that they were waiters, you know, the waiter, all the Irish waiters and everything came over. They were all there. And obviously, it was a huge success.
They were all waiters on the Queen Mary.
Well, my father was there too.
They were waiters on the Queen Mary. They jumped ship in New York, and they all pulled their money together. I don't know if you knew that. Jerry,
well, yeah, they got the two boys got together. But the best story was, so the next day they have the opening party. The next day, Saturday morning, and I mean, as you knew, 2nd Avenue, 52nd Street was kind of I won't say posh, but it was the Upper East Side. And so these two elderly matrons, you know, like, well dressed and probably totally out of place in an Irish bar, they decide to try the new place for brunch. So they come over, to sit down, and they order, and one of those big banquettes that they had in the back. And after a while, they signaled over. Toner was at the end of the bar, and I said, "Excuse me, are you the owner?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Everything okay?" And she's like, "There's a waiter under my table." So a guy from the night before passed out with all the drinking and rolled under the banquette. And then at some point I'd roll back out. So that was their introduction to what was then. So let's move on. So the reason why I asked that question, have you ever had a real job?
You know what? That's a good question. And thank God the answer to that question is no. I've always done what I loved. I mean, I had start out jobs, you know, when you're in school. I used to wash boats at Seaford Marina. I worked in a place called All American Burger, and I was peeling potatoes because they had real French fries. But I worked in believe it or not, Sbarro out in Long Island before they went into a national chain. Jerry Sbarro was the Sbarro family. They only had the two stores. They had New York and they had Long Island. And so I knew the Sbarro family at the time, but of course it's so many years ago. I was in high school. So, but those would be the only kind of jobs that you do. That's a job. I mean, right now I do what I love. I spend a lot of time.
You use the old adage that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly. I don't mind. Of course, the admin work is always a pain in the neck. You know, Sean, I know you love being a publican. But of course, the admin work it's just part of the game, and you just go with it. But if you love what you do, it's, you know, it's.
I have to say, I love the people. That's what I miss about photos.
And exactly, it's the same thing for me. I love the people. I love performing, and you are a wonderful performer. You are being a publican in Foley's in New York. We used to love to come in to see you, and people used to love to come see you and your dad. He was quite a personality too. I know where it all came from.
Well, hopefully, if the technical end of things has been worked out, my father should be watching this live from Cavan, Ireland.
Oh, hello, John.
That's how I got the part that your mother, well, your wife was from Cavan, so he latches on to all things Cavan. So you mentioned Paddy Noonan. So I mean, Paddy Noonan was, to anybody who's listening who's not familiar, I mean, Paddy Noonan was, what's the best way to describe it? I mean, he was a legend in Irish, he was on both sides of the Atlantic. I mean, he did coach tours, he had shows. I mean, I remember as a kid, because the Derrygara would be stopped for coach tours, and I remember the first time I met Paddy Noonan, because I loved when the Yanks would come, because we were like 5 and 6 and 7, and you know we tried to look as cute as we possibly could because they give us money.
Oh, okay. Oh,
you know,
Paddy Noonan would give you money?
Paddy Noonan didn't give anybody money, but no, but the people, Lord rest him. But am I wrong?
I worked for him for 8 years. I don't have a memory. In fact, a friend of mine, John Trotter, used to say, and I'm only kidding because I love Paddy, and he passed away. And I know probably a lightning bolt will come, but he would get a great kick out of it. John Trotter used to say, you know, Andy, goes, Paddy Noonan has a musical wallet. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, we can't get a note out of it.
I like that one. So let's switch gears a little bit. So
sure.
Growing up on Long Island, huge Mets fan.
Oh, huge Mets fan. And I'm still hanging in there, even though we've had this imploding over the last 10 games. But we're hanging in there. I thought we made the deals that we needed to make. There really wasn't a pitcher out there. We would have had to give up everything that we had to get really anything. I like the Baez move. So we just need to get these bats going, Sean. That's what we need to get going.
But tell me, watching the game last night, because seemingly it came down to the Mets were in on one or two people. Would you rather have seen Chris Bryant wearing that Mets jersey?
Well, I have to confess to you, I was recording my New York Irish Hour podcast last night because it's the only night I could record it. It goes live on Saturday. And last night's game is the game I did not see. So
well, check the box score. He hit 2 home runs against you guys last night. So
yes.
You know. But now you've mentioned Carnegie Hall and what a tremendous honor. And I believe if Google and Wikipedia is to be believed, you've sold it out 9 times.
9 times. That's right.
Pretty impressive.
Well, thank you very much. And that just goes to show the support that that I have in the Irish American scene. I have a lot of supporters out there that have been with me all through my 35-year journey in the music business. And I've had a unique kind of journey. I'm not the guy that had the hit record and have that single that I've been living off for 35 years. I've chipped away for all these years. I've collected people's names and emails, and I stay in touch with people. And from doing all that, people have come along with me on this journey. And the cool thing about Carnegie Hall, I mean, for me, I mean, it's a very personal thing to me because I'll look out in the audience and I'm like, I know them, I know them, I know them. I probably know all those faces that are out there. So for me, it's been that kind of journey, you know, as opposed to an artist that has a hit record and enjoys that hit and makes a career of that hit. It's been a very personal career for me. And everybody that comes to my show is gold. That's to me. And I stay in touch with them. We have a large email list, probably about 25,000. I had a huge mailing list that we don't mail our newsletter to anymore, about 80,000. It's just far too expensive to put a newsletter like that together anymore. So we're building up the email list and of course, working on building up the Facebook following.
Social media. Well, go on. You have a platform here.
And it's been that kind of journey for me. So I'm very thankful and I love what I do. And I'm glad that people enjoy what I do. So
while you have the platform, so for any of our viewers that would want to catch up, where's the best way to find out where you're playing?
Well, of course, I'm on Facebook, Andy Cooney and his band, Facebook. I also have a personal page you can go to. And also I just launched the New York Irish Hour Facebook page, which people are starting to like and follow. Um, I would say the best way, I don't do much of Twitter. I do have a Twitter following, but I'm not one that put opinions or post
Yeah.
opinions. So that would not be me. But as far as the best way for people is to go to andycooney.com and get on my email list, because you'll get that email. It'll pop up maybe one email a week, or if something's happening, maybe you'll get another one. You'll get the podcast. You'll hear about that's really the best way. I find Facebook, people kind of go to it. It's short lived, and
Right.
then people move
Move
on.
on.
But I find with the email that if people open it, they do go through it. And we have, and this is another cool thing about my email list. Everybody that is on it has clicked it and went on it and joined it. So I have about a 40% open rate on my email list,
Pretty good.
which is unbelievable. Even Constant Contact, I was talking to them. They said most people have about a 6% open
Yeah.
rate, and then I have something like a 15 to 20% click rate. So so these are my people that are on it. They're the ones that want to hear from me. And
So
of course,
anyone that's out there that wants to go on and so we're to andycooney.com.
andycooney.com. You can also use your cell phone. I'm trying to find the card here. I think it's if I think of it, I'll mention it. There's a 5-number phone number you put in, and you put Andy C in, and I think it's 3.
And you get fierce technical here now.
I know.
This is a
Well,
very nuts. This is a very nuts and bolt operation here.
But
you know what I
listen,
mean? we're working on a shoestring here, and you're bringing in
out
5
playing
bit
golf. If I'm at a Met game or playing golf and we're having a great conversation and people want to know more, I say, take your cell phone out. And you can do this in 2 seconds, So, but this is it. I've collected people along the way, and I've stayed in touch. And thank God they haven't disappeared or unsubscribed. We have a pretty low unsubscribe rate. And so, look, it's all a journey, Sean. And
that. So here, when we're on the subject, who's the most famous person in your cell phone?
Most famous person in my cell phone. Oh. Ooh. Well, let's see. I have quite a few good famous friends. Larry Gatlin from the Gatlin brothers, and we're close friends. We do a lot of stuff together. We did a video. You had to go on YouTube and just put Andy Cooney, Larry Gatlin, a song we wrote together called "Come Tennessee Me Tonight." Peter King is a close friend, Congressman.
No, yes. Not the Monday night quarterback guy.
No. Yeah, so he was always supportive, always came to my shows at Carnegie Hall.
Never came to Foley's though. Always threatened to come to Foley's, never did.
And never did. Oh, yeah. Well, he's up and down from Carolina. He's got a daughter down there, and trying to think of who else has been a big supporter. George Mitchell. Remember a senator from
yeah, I have a copy of his. He was good at writing reports, and he was also the guy who
a part of the
Good Friday Agreement.
Good Friday Agreement, and always a supporter, comes to my shows at Carnegie Hall. So just coming to mind. I'm sure there's a few more, and I'll be like, hopefully they're not watching. Hey, Cooney.
Well, you'll have to come. You get to come back on and apologize. So I don't know if you know what today is.
Okay.
Today is the anniversary of three famous people died today. Babe Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
You may know he played for the other team in New York.
Yes, I've heard of him. Yeah.
Elvis.
Oh, okay.
And Aretha Franklin.
Wow, those are 3 huge names to share that day of going to their eternal reward. Isn't that something?
What I heard someone say, it's the King. Is it the King, the Babe, and
Queen?
The Queen. Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes left here. So I have a lot of things I want to ask you about. Favorite songwriter?
Wow. Yeah, I have quite a few. I would have to say Pat Alger, one of my favorites. He wrote the Garth Brooks hits. And I would have to say another writer in Ireland, Carl Corcoran, and my drummer, Jimmy Kelly. Two great songwriters. I've recorded a lot of their stuff over the years. Of course, Larry Gatlin, and to have the opportunity to write with Larry. Phil Coulter, of course, an amazing songwriter. And of course, me and Phil go back a long, long way, back to the early 90s. So my God, almost 30 years we go back. And I also got a chance to write with him too, called Calling Us Home Again, a song for the Gathering year, if you remember back in 2013. Right. So yeah, I would have to say they're my favorite songwriters that are coming to mind.
So you mentioned Phil Coulter. That's kind of where I was going with this, because as you said, you've recorded with Phil, you've performed with Phil, you're good friends with Phil. So growing up, is like I said, we had the bar, and for some reason, my father went through a phase where he was Phil Coulter's music was perfect background music in a restaurant.
Sure.
So we had this really archaic background music thing where you could put cassettes into it. And we had 4 cassettes, all 4 Phil Coulter cassettes. And while, all I got to do is hear the Sea of Tranquility. And I was like, find me something and I'm going to swing off it, because it's just, I can't.
Well, I'll have to tell you, Sean, really, if oldies is not kind of the place you fall asleep in.
Oh, no, I'm talking about growing up.
Growing up. Oh, yeah. I would say Kennedy's having the Phil Coulter music going on.
So Phil Coulter, to me, 2 of the greatest Irish songwriters, Phil Coulter would be one. The other would be, and sadly he passed away recently, Liam Riley.
Yes, Liam Riley. And
Liam
I knew Liam very well. We had the same management in Ireland back in the early 90s. I had a record deal with K-Tel at the time. And so I knew Liam really, really well. I never wrote with him, but we had the same management, so we did know each other very well. Another writer, maybe you're not thinking of, and I just featured him on my New York Irish Hour last week on my podcast, Mick Hanley.
I know Mick Hanley, yeah.
And Mick Hanley, probably of all the writers in Ireland, besides Phil Coulter, because don't forget, Phil Coulter wrote Saturday Night for the Bay City Rollers.
Right.
So I even said to Phil Coulter, I said, Phil, what's the biggest song you ever wrote? And he says, oh, definitely The Town I Love So Well. I said, really? I'm talking about mailbox money. Where did you make the most money? He just looked puzzled. I said, you're going to sit here and tell me that Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers didn't bring in? He goes, oh, absolutely. Saturday Night. When you get a pop band like that to put out a record like that, and Phil Coulter produced the Bay City Rollers as well, that album, and wrote a lot of the songs on that album, he made a lot of money on that. Mick Hanley, don't forget, had a #1 hit for Hal Ketchum called Past the Point of Rescue. And also Mary Black had a big run with that record. So I would say, as far as the money is concerned, and people that have probably made the most money in songwriting, it would have to be Phil Coulter and Mick Hanley, in my opinion.
Well, it's funny because
you too, of course. Bono, of course, is on a different level.
Well, that's ever since you started calling the presidents, that's a whole different story. But for me, and The Town I Love So Well is a song that I've been known to butcher. It's a long song. It's like 6 minutes long.
Oh, we have time. Go for it. Let me hear it.
We actually don't have time. We're running out of time. But for me, the greatest song that Phil Coulter ever wrote, and I think Luke Kelly performed it, and they only performed it once in the Embankment in Tallaght, Scorn Not His Simplicity, which is a song he wrote about.
Both of his versions of The Town I Love So Well and Scorn Not, all the definitive versions.
But that's the thing. There's certain songs that like certain people should only be allowed to sing, and that's 2 of them. The other one is like Sinatra's the only one who should be allowed to sing My Way. I got to meet Paul Anka at one of his shows, and he wrote My Way. But in fairness, I'm like, Paul, dude, you're a great writer, but you cannot sing it. That's for shit, sure. But Phil Coulter, one of the family pictures of that we want is there's a music shop that opened in Cavan, actually. But I don't know if you ever came across him, a guy called Brian Finley, and Brian was in the Mighty Evans. And
okay, I heard the name before. Yeah,
of the opening of the store, and there's a great picture of my youngest sister Norma. She might have been 4 at the time, in his arms outside. It was just one of those like great pictures from my childhood. But my earliest memories of Phil Coulter, like I said, grew up just all I got to listen to was Sea of Tranquility. But when Sea of Tranquility came out, which would have been about mid-80s, I want to say 85, and I happened to be in Dublin. And at the time, my mother wasn't well, and she was a huge Phil Coulter fan, and the album had just come out. So I went to HMV in the ILAC Centre, and I bought 2 copies of the album, one from my mom and one from my godmother, who was also a huge Phil Coulter fan. 15, up from the country, wouldn't be that savvy about being in Dublin on my own. And so I walk in, pay the money, they put the records, and as I'm about to take the records, this guy take the records out of my hand. And I was gobsmacked. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, here's my receipt, I paid for them. What are you doing? Give me back my records. It was Phil Coulter. He was signing them.
Are you kidding?
I didn't know what he looked like.
Oh,
At
wow.
that point, like, all you got was the cover of the album with the 2 doves.
Yeah, and that's right. There's no picture of him on the cover of that album. Sean, I'd like to, if we have time, I want to share one of my favorite Phil Coulter stories, if you will.
Sure.
And we're going to go back in time, 1994. Okay. Well, I'll set it up with an album that we started working on back around 1991, 92. And so I was in the studio with Phil. Actually, I got him into the studio. I called him in Ireland, and he graciously agreed. At that time, you had to think the guy is huge at this time, playing all over the world. But he had met me in New York with Patty Noonan, and he remembered me. And he says, well, let me see what I can do. If a window can open, I'll come into the studio with you, because I told him I wanted to record The Town I Love So Well, but I just didn't want to just record it. I had it with him on the piano. It would make it special. So believe it or not, it worked. I got him into the studio. We rattled through the town. He goes, hey, Andy, do you know Gold and Silver Days? And I said, I do. So he rattles through it, and I recorded that. Come to the last verse of Gold and Silver Days. He mentions Johnny Quigley and the Royal Show Band and all that stuff. And I said, Phil, I work the Irish American scene. And most of these people don't know who Johnny Quigley is, and all this. He goes, give me 5 minutes. I'll rewrite that verse for you. He wrote that 3rd verse of Gold and Silver Days. We gathered in the daisy field on Sunday after Mass. I can hear the songs, the stories, and the laughter. Through the years, we all have scattered, but the friends we made back then are the friends we could rely on ever after. I mean, to come up and write that, it just blew me away. So I go back to Rego Records. They said, see if you'll do a whole album. And he graciously agreed. They agreed on a handsome budget, which I was very impressed. Halfway through the album, believe it or not, the record company decided they didn't want to fund it anymore. So here we were stuck. Phil said, pay the studio, pay the bills. Don't worry about me. He says, you're going to owe me a favor. So he calls me 2 years later, and he says, he goes, Andy, he says, I need you to do that favor for me. And I said, what's that? He says, I have a very important friend of mine get married. He says, and your band is going to play the wedding. I said, no problem. I said, when is it? He says, it's July the 3rd. I said, oh, I'm looking at my calendar. I said, Phil, you're not going to believe this. I'm getting married on June 24th, and I'm going to be on my honeymoon in Hawaii. He goes, never mind then. He says, get me a bond, get me a good bond. This is a real head in the business, get married. And I said, who is it? Never mind who it is. So I get him Jerry Finley and the Caraband. I come back from the honeymoon, and I said to Jerry Finley, I said, Jerry, whose wedding was that you did for Phil? He goes, oh, Andy, let me tell you, Liam Neeson's wedding. I said, what? Are you kidding me? Liam Neeson's wedding? So I called Phil back, and I said, Phil, how can not tell me Liam Neeson's wedding? We surely would have cut the honeymoon short by a day or two and come back. I said, my God, he says, Andy, you're going to find that, in your career, you're not going to be able to do everything. And I said, Phil, you might be getting a call from the White House to come play the piano, for the Clintons, 2 or 3 times a month. I said, I don't get that call. He says, look, Andy, I'm going to say one thing to you. He says, hopefully you only get married once. He says, have your effing honeymoon and enjoy it. He says, that's it. No more talk about this. that was the end of that. But I think it's a kind of a cool story anyway.
A very cool story. Now, when you talk about getting invited to the White House, so Ronald Reagan comes to Ireland.
Oh, okay.
He's staying in Ashford Castle. They've arranged for Phil Coulter to provide the entertainment and and have an evening with Phil Coulter. But Phil shows up, and obviously the security guards never. You're not Phil Coulter. He said, "I'm Phil Coulter." So they wouldn't let him in. So he goes down to the village, to the local in Cong, and he plays for all the locals in Cong, while Reagan had to go and just watch the Late Late Show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Ask Phil that. He'll tell you they wouldn't let him in.
Wow.
Andy,
I will.
This has been a blast, and we didn't get to cover so much stuff. We didn't get to cover the New York tenors, your 19 albums, playing with your son, playing with the RTE Orchestra. But are you doing your Christmas shows?
Believe it or not, this year would have been my 10th Carnegie, and we decided, because Broadway is not open yet, and by now I'd have 20 buses sold. We'd have to start from scratch right now, so we're gonna leave it for next year. Hopefully, we'll be.
So maybe what we'll do is hopefully we can revisit this in December, because I do know you're having your cruise of the Irish Stars in 2022.
That is happening, and actually that is going better than ever. We're getting close to 1,000 people. I think people are just really ready to travel on a cruise. European travel has been tough. I had a cruise with the New York Tenors that recently got pulled, and we were sold out. But I think people are, with the travel to Europe, having to have the PCR test and the proof of vaccination, all the hoops they're making us go through. I think, that is kind of why that cruise fell apart. But as far as cruising out of Florida, domestic flights, people are coming, and they are really looking forward to it.
So maybe we can revisit this. Maybe we'll have a wrap up of the Mets season, because I also want to talk to you about the honor of singing the national anthem did you sing it at Shea or City Field?
I sang mostly at Shea. The only time I sang at City Field was when we had the honor with the New York Tenors to do the national anthem at City Field. But Sean, I just want to say one thing. I do want to mention Kevin Brosnahan's name once again. He's the one that kind of brought me close to baseball. I was always the fan, but through Kevin, I met you. I remember Mitch, the head of the umpires, Stick Michael, which an unbelievable story with Stick. When I took my son Ryan he was maybe 8, 9 years old to the Met game, and Ryan's looking at Stick's ring, World Series ring. I said, once you go over, he'll show you that ring. And Ryan has his little Met hat on. I'm surprised Kevin didn't make him wear a suit, So he goes over, and Stick looks at Ryan. He says, see this ring, kid? He says, this is when the Yankees beat the Mutts. And he pulled his hat down. And Ryan comes back over, sits on my lap. He goes, I don't like that guy. This is the 2000 ring, he says to me. Yeah, so that was that. But after that, maybe 5 or 6 years after that, as we were going to the games, and of course Stick was a regular with Kevin, and they were very close friends. They became great pals.
Two men gone too soon, that's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm forever grateful for Kevin. And I really miss him. And I know you do too. I talk to people that knew Kevin, and they're like, man, I really miss that guy. So many cool things with Kevin. Went up to Fenway Park. We picked up Frank Malzone on the way to Fenway Park. And it was amazing, all the people coming over and paying homage to Frank Malzone at Fenway. Walking in the gates of Fenway, I got to meet Ron Darling once again, who I had met, believe it or not, years and years ago. He was married to an Irish girl.
He was, yeah.
And they were at an Irish gig that I was playing down in St. Petersburg, Florida, when the Mets were in
my neighborhood.
Yeah. So, but that was all those years ago. And of course, when I met him that night at Fenway, coming in the press entrance with Kevin, tried to remind him of it. And of course, because it was, I guess, at another time when he was married to that to the Irish girl. I think she was from Dublin.
Yes.
And maybe, I guess, that didn't end too well. So
no, he doesn't. He likes to mention the fact that he was married to an Irish girl and moves swiftly along. I'm
so
like, I married a girl from Dublin, moves swiftly along. I'm like,
ended pretty quickly.
exactly.
So let me just say, I'm just forever grateful to knowing Kevin. And like I said, we all miss him. I know a lot of the people out there watching this, maybe a lot of them remember him. Remember Kevin, from the table upstage, up in the Diamond Club at Shea Stadium, where lots of fun things happened.
Awesome. Well, Andy, this has been a blast. And like I said, hopefully we can have Andy Cooney part 2, so we can cover all of the other stuff that I wanted to cover. We got some fun stories, and I really appreciate you doing this. Like I said, this is cracking the bat for the Irish Baseball Society. And thank you all for watching.
And I want to thank John Fitzgerald for all the stuff that he lended to today's program.
Exactly. John, yes, he's
John, you were a great audience.
Well, John's just there because if you decide to go blue, he pushes the button and we're done.
Oh,
okay.
John, what a pleasure. Thank you, John. John was the one that coordinated it all and put it all together with the emails.
He's the brains behind this well-oiled machine.
Absolutely.
The sad part is I'm the face of the franchise, which is scary. Because I have a much better voice. I have a much better face for radio. But listen, Andy, been a pleasure. Hope to see you soon, either here or there. To anyone who's out there who wants a good night, a fun night, and get on andycooney.com, get on that list, because I love the thing about you said you grew up playing with your family. You said every show you play is like playing in front of your family, except a bigger room.
That's exactly it. You nailed it right there, Sean.
I did my research. Andy, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Take care.